slow clap traditionally would be for situations where you're so in awe by something that you lose all sense of time and clap slowly. In its more modern usage, it represents sarcasm. Person slow clap for how silly, idiotic, or moronic something seems. Cool traditionalist James motherfucking Gunn. I'm a believer. DC fans have a right to feel excited because this man stepped into a universe that involves Steve Rogers and Tony Stark and created the strongest character arc out of all of them. And he did it with a CGI raccoon. What? Both Cap and Stark got on incredibly well, but have been completely eclipsed, in my opinion, after the recent release of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And honestly, is it even that shocking? Captain America's first film was directed by Joe Johnston before being taken over by the Russo brothers, who also finished his story in Endgame. And the character of Tony Stark was directed by Jon Favreau for the first two films. Shane Black directed the third installment, and his story was also finished off by the Russo brothers. Those characters had different owners with different ideas, which can add more peaks and troughs to the overall curve of the arc. And when you zoom out, you still see that great arc shape that was ultimately crafted, but when you zoom in, you see some of those imperfections. James Gunn done all three of the Guardians films, and it's so clear that the story he is telling now was actually thought out from the first pen stroke of Volume 1. So many times in Marvel films, they claim they had this huge vision for something, when there is blatant proof that they actually wasn't. Whether that's in-story evidence, or from directors giving different answers to the same questions surrounding the characters of the films they directed. This film is all raccoons, no retcons, and all arm cannons, no head cannon. Although I like Tony Stark's genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist to selfless hero and Steve Rogers, not a great hero but a great man, finally getting that dance. It has to be said that I think the main reason we love them is because of the portrayal done by Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr., who feel one and the same with these characters now, more than the actual intricacies of their story, which at face value seem more paint by numbers now looking back. So much of their arcs are fed to us with small fan service moments and callbacks, which I've grown to dislike now as a method of storytelling when done in abundance. Things like I am Iron Man and I can do this all day get used so often that it starts to feel ridiculous to me at points. That what in their lives are just insignificant sentences said amongst thousands of others each day now become the mantra of their entire existence, just because these sentences in particular caught wind and became something popular amongst fans. And so now these words are used at every single similar moment to make the fans go, I do. I understood that reference. And I understand that these sentences define what they represent, but it's just weird to wear it on your forehead with the same literal words every single day, instead of just acting on it in more nuanced ways. It just seems unrealistic. I know, talking trees and raccoons are feasible, but odd callback catchphrases here and there aren't, I know, but that is genuinely the case. When watching films like this, we already suspend our disbelief to be shown almost anything on screen. But what keeps it suspended is grounded in the absurdities we see with anchors of truth, as the much needed elements of realism in the greater sea of comic book fiction. Anyway, I don't want to argue over the details or talk ill of what was ultimately great stories. This video is just meant to be praised for what James Gunn set out and managed to achieve, not convoluted in a tight free film package, never letting the distraction of his character's presences in other film franchises ever knock him off the focused story that he wanted to tell, even when those characters were handed back to him in not the same condition as when he borrowed them.
You missed the first time, then you got them both the second time.
The Rocket you first meet appears selfish and greedy, because he quite literally is. He only does things if there's some kind of financial reward. He is angry and aggressive with a chip on his shoulder, not a cybernetic one. Honey. And you could be fooled to believe that he cares about no one but himself, maybe for good reason, only keeping Groot around for the much needed muscle. But it's also clear that big old tree is here under his own volition. Rocket doesn't seem to be employing him or own him in any kind of way. Subconsciously, we maybe understand there's some kind of relationship there, and that tells us that maybe he does care deep down for something other than himself. We then quickly get the lineup scene, where we get everything we need to know on Rocket right there. Groot is confirmed to be a known associate of his, as is Lila. His criminal record includes 13 counts of escaping prison, soon to be 14. We get spoken the exact visuals basically for this third film by John C. Reilly. All the information in this small scene is not only explored in the most recent film, it's not only referred to in the second film, but it's even still continually hinted at in this film. And when I say hinted at, I mean completely just told to us. I find it weird when some negative reviews say they understand this film taking a look at a different character. I found Rocket's story jarring and aggressively sad, as if the story has just been sprung up on people and there's some kind of surprise. Later in this same film, we see him unaware of his origins prior to being tested on. See Quill take notice of the cybernetic influx running down his back. We see the Thing quite literally get drunk and start blabbering on about how he didn't ask to be made. He didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together over and over and turn to
Some little monster!
Rocket, no one's calling you a monster.
He called me vermin! She called me rodent!
How was this a surprise? The second film is seen from his point of view so many times. He gets absolutely broken down by Yondu. You see him be vulnerable. You see him make decisions that to the rest of the characters may seem in line with his same old selfish character traits, but we know are actually being made for the safety of others. And we see his big old triangle face as the final frame of that movie, and as we do again at the ending of the third and most recent one. I don't know. I'm not a film student. I'm not a writer or a critic. I'm just a fan of this character in these films. I'm affected by recency bias and bias in general. Rocket's character arc is no doubt well done. Is it the best? Is it the second best? I don't actually give a fuck. It just makes the better title. Your favorite can be whatever you want it to be. I just currently personally think Rocket's story was crafted with the steadiest hand. Whether you like I Can Do This All Day, I Am Iron Man, Great Power Must Also Come Great Responsibility, or The Forever and Beautiful Sky, it's not a bad bunch to pick from, is it?